I found myself grieving again. I thought that I was going to lose a friend this week. I really thought that maybe I had seen her for the last time because she was so sick. Fortunately, she's doing better. I found out, and that's fantastic. What happens, happens, and we go through these difficult times, and we use them to propel us and to help us transcend and take our minds and spirits higher. I've written in my prospectus about 62 that my first experience with aging was when my friend Gail, who I'd known since high school, when we were in college together at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, Nebraska, she turned 23. And she was about 6 months older than I was, maybe not even that much. And she turned 23, and you would have thought that somebody had given her a death sentence. It was like, tomorrow morning I'll wake up and I'll be old. And that's what she was like. She was so distraught and distracted and inconsolable. We took her out for a beer. We bought her some mixed thing that was really expensive for us to pay for. And she is a really optimistic, positive person, but we couldn't make her feel better. Nothing we did made her feel better. And I was driving that night, and she asked me just to drop her off. We're in the car, and it's after the bars have closed, and we probably went to Denny's or something after I had taken some people home. People lived in different parts of town, so I would take them home, and then usually Gail would be the last person I dropped off if I was driving. And we're like in the middle of Lincoln. I mean, there's nothing open. It was in a business district. It might have even been the main street in town, O Street. And I felt kind of panicky about just dropping her off, but she just wanted to get out of the car. And I said, what are you going to do? I'm going to walk around and think. somebody saw her later. They actually saw her and told me that they had seen Gail just walking down the middle of the street. And it's like 3 or 4 in the morning. It was some of the boys we knew told me this. And whenever I think about Gail turning 23 and I think about aging, I picture Gail walking down the middle of the street in a strange neighborhood in the middle of the night by herself. She's wandering the streets lamenting turning 23. I've never felt like that about aging. I mean, I really never have. And this is the year that I turned 62. And you can see this. This is not a special effect. You can tell that I'm no spring chicken, even though I don't have turkey waddles. You can tell by my neck. It's kind of like a tree, you know. It's still, I mean, I'm like watching myself slowly fall apart, and I have never had a moment like what happened to Gail. A few months after this happened with Gail, when it was my turn to turn 23, I was probably like this, like, you know, like, never happened and still hasn't. These days, because people know how to eat, they probably have been using sunscreen for at least half their adulthood. We've just in the general population have had an awareness about the sun. And, you know, people, if they do smoke, usually they don't smoke as much as they did when we all were kids. And, you know, and I mean, I live in California. I mean, you don't walk out the door without water. So, you know, we really don't look that bad. I mean, we don't. I just don't understand what is that magical line of thinking or magic moment when you look in the mirror. My father started wasting he started losing weight about 13 months before he died. And at about the 7th month, I started dyeing my hair. I started dyeing my hair and wearing really baggy clothes. And I would look in the mirror, and sometimes I wouldn't even take a lunch break because I would have spent so many time looking in the mirror, obsessing about my face and about how old I looked. And I would have been about 47, but that's all I could see when I looked at myself in the mirror. And then after I started dyeing my hair, I remember I just hated it. It was ridiculous, but I guess it was some ritual that was helping me cope with my grief. And that is the closest I've come to going insane about aging or getting older.
stop, Civic Center Station.
Maybe because I'm pragmatic, maybe because of the example of my mother who learned how to swim when she was 50. And so I had that as an example for taking care of myself. I would walk over to campus even when it was really cold. My limit, I think, was 3 degrees above zero. I would walk rather than get a ride or take the bus. And it was about 2 miles. I used to see these old women, and Lincoln, Nebraska is it's not that hilly. There are, there's a little rolling, it's not flat the way people say Nebraska's flat, but it's not really, But it's not like you have to struggle, to go up the hill to go to the grocery store. I used to see these old women who looked like they were afraid to be out on the street. And I'm like 18, 19, 20 years old. I did not want to be like that. It wasn't so much I didn't want to be 75. I didn't want to be 75 and look like I was afraid to walk down the street or be afraid to walk down the street. I remember this one woman specifically, and she wasn't quite that old. She was probably only in her 50s, but she obviously had problems with her feet, and she was still wearing 2-inch heels. I went through my phase of platforms and heels I was over it after I saw that my dad said, well, that's from wearing those shoes. But it's because I saw that woman on the street. She could barely walk you could see the pain in her face. And of course, it's distorting her face, which, you know, I mean, she's in her 50s. Her face was still in pretty good shape. I didn't want to be that way. I didn't want to be afraid to walk down the street. I didn't want to look like I was afraid to walk down the street. And I wanted to be able to walk 2 miles until the day I died.